Okay, to continue in this last video, during the online class yesterday, there was a question, why is it that in section 9, the protagonist is going to the east? Well, I didn't give you those sections, so I think it was probably confusing. So I added this slide to explain in more detail that we see someone named the Nijo Empress, Nijo no Kisaki, could also be translated the Nijo Consort, who is introduced in section 3. And then we find that the protagonist is having a relationship with her. And finally, in section 6, we see, as in this picture from the book contained at the Yale Beinecke Library, we see that the protagonist at last managed to abduct her under cover of darkness. And if you read it, some demons or oni appear, and then they take her away. Well, if you read carefully, we could see that the story is written in 2 parts. The first part, like writing about a fictional character, and then after that, it describes that it's actually a story about the Nijo Empress, who was so beautiful that someone carried her off on his back. And then because of this, just because these stories are put together, it seems that this is the reason that the protagonist is forced to go into exile to Azuma in the east. But the stories don't have a direct connection, but just by being side by side, we create this overall story. And then in section 7, we see that he begins to go off to the east. And then we have in our readings in section 9, where he goes to the east, and he first goes to Mikawa, where he sees the 8 bridges, or Yatsuhashi, and the irises, or Kakitsubata there. And he composes a poem where the first syllable in each line begins in a way to make Kakitsubata, to make the sound for the irises. And also then quickly after that, then he goes to Suruga, where at Mount Utsu he meets an ascetic, or Shugyosha. And then he continues on his journey, and he sees Mount Fuji covered with snow in the 5th month of the old calendar. And then he continues to the Sumida River, where there's an interesting story about the capital birds, or Miyakodori, that he's never seen before. So all of these stories about this adventurous Narihira are very popular throughout the history of Japanese literature. If we compare the tale of Genji to the tales of Ise, both protagonists are elegant, amorous heroes who are exiled for their transgressions. So perhaps Murasaki Shikibu had Narihira in mind while she was writing about Genji. There's also no plays related to the tales of Ise, including one called Kakitsubata. And there's lots of artwork, including the scrolls or emaki that I've shown and other books. There's also these byobu paintings, these folding screen paintings by Ogata Korin, which are very popular and which are held by the Nezu Museum. We can see that it's only pictures of irises, but there are 8 clusters of irises if we count, 4 clusters in one screen and 4 in the other. And this painting is connected with the Yatsuhashi, the 8 bridges. Several years later, Ogata Korin also painted this, which was more clearly connected to this idea of the Yatsuhashi. This painting, this set of folding screens are held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. And if we think about this kind of artwork also may have even influenced Vincent van Gogh when he wrote his this painting about irises, just as he was entering to live in a mental hospital. We can see similarities between the shapes of the irises. This painting is at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, California. So there are all of these connections. The Ise Monogatari has been very popular throughout Japanese history, not just because of the stories, but more importantly, because of the poems. So just like the Tale of Genji was very popular, not just because it was a book of stories, but also because the poems were very popular and poems were very important. So we can think about the Ise along with the Kokinshu as being one of the most important books for people studying Japanese literature throughout history.